Rio Grande River is one of Albuquerque's most beautiful features.
According to measurements from today, the water flow is about as weak as it's ever been over the past 50 years.
Geologists have just issued a red alert after uncovering a massive subterranean anomaly beneath the Rio Grande Riverbed. A discovery that promises to rewrite our understanding of the region's geology and raises urgent questions about future stability and water security. Using an array of cutting-edge geophysical tools, from seismic reflection profiling to electromagnetic conductivity mapping, researchers detected a vast cavernous void stretching for kilometers beneath layers of alluvial sediments. The initial signs emerged from irregularities in ground-penetrating radar scans conducted during a routine assessment of sediment deposition. What first appeared as simple anomalies in acoustic signatures soon revealed themselves to be fractures intersecting a far larger network of voids, possibly connected to deep crustal processes. The moment the survey team recognized the scale of the void, they convened an emergency session to evaluate the potential consequences for the bordering states and communities that depend on the river's flow for agriculture and drinking water. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The anomaly's location lies near a stretch of the Rio Grande, notorious for its shifting channels and seasonal flooding. Over centuries, the river has carved and recarved its path, leaving behind terraces of gravel, sand, and silt. Beneath these deposits, geologists have now identified what appears to be a partially collapsed karst system, though its formation cannot be explained by ordinary limestone dissolution alone. Instead, deeper analyses suggest the involvement of hydrothermal fluids, possibly remnants of ancient volcanic activity from the Basin and Range province. Magnetic surveys showed local highs and lows inconsistent with known surface geology, pointing to intrusive bodies or altered rock zones. The team hypothesizes that a series of hydrothermal fractures open pathways for water to leach minerals, progressively enlarging subsurface cavities. Over millennia, such a network could have expanded until it undercuts the riverbed itself, forming the sprawling void now detected. Immediate implications of this find are profound. First and foremost, the structural integrity of the riverbed comes into question. If the cavern continues to enlarge or if sections of its roof collapse, there could be rapid subsidence events along the river's course. Agricultural fields that rely on predictable flows could suddenly lose irrigation water, and entire stretches of riparian habitat might drain into these newly formed sinkholes. Models developed by the survey team indicate that a collapse in one of the larger chambers could divert significant volumes of water away from the surface. Such an event would not only disrupt water delivery systems, but also potentially trigger rapid groundwater recharge far below the root zones of crops, leading to widespread soil desiccation on the floodplain. The specter of sinkhole formation is not the only worry. Seismic risk in the region could change. The Rio Grande Rift itself results from extensional tectonics that have pulled the crust apart over tens of millions of years, but localized weakening of subsurface strata could alter stress distributions along nearby faults. Geophysicists warn that a sudden roof collapse might induce microseismicity, producing tremors capable of reactivating dormant faults. Though unlikely to produce major earthquakes, even small jolts could damage infrastructure such as levees, bridges, and pipelines that crisscross the river corridor. Engineers are already evaluating the load-bearing capacity of key structures, using both in situ testing and finite element models to simulate various collapse scenarios. Their preliminary results suggest that certain mid-span sections of highway bridges might be vulnerable to settlement if ground subsidence exceeds a few tens of centimeters. Beyond immediate geotechnical effects, the discovery has raised alarms about water quality. The Rio Grande flows through regions underlain by aquifers that feed numerous wells and springs. A sudden breach of the riverbed into deep-seated cavities could permit surface water to cascade downward, carrying sediments and pollutants into aquifers that serve as drinking water sources. Conversely, contaminated groundwater from deep reservoirs might migrate upward into the river, introducing heavy metals or geothermal solutes. Trace element analyses of core samples show elevated concentrations of arsenic and lead in some fracture fillings, hinting at the possibility of mineral-rich fluids seeping through. Toxic contamination in aquifers could force communities to rely on expensive treatment systems or switch to alternative sources, straining both budgets and public confidence. Ecologists, too, are scrambling to assess the impacts. The Rio Grande supports a web of life ranging from cottonwood bosks to rare fish species. Aquatic organisms, in particular, depend on steady flows and predictable temperature regimes. A dramatic alteration in river discharge patterns could decimate populations of native fish, such as the Rio Grande chub and the rare Rio Grande silvery minnow. Wetland complexes along the floodplain, critical stopovers for migratory birds, could dry out unexpectedly, leading to mass die-offs. Ecologists plan to deploy an array of environmental sensors and conduct regular biotic surveys to monitor changes in species composition and abundance. Early warning triggers are being developed to alert managers when water levels or quality metrics stray outside safe thresholds. The regional economy is poised to feel ripple effects. Agriculture in New Mexico and Texas consumes the lion's share of Rio Grande water, growing high-value crops like pecans, chili peppers, and cotton. Should water deliveries falter, farmers may face catastrophic crop failures. Local municipalities might impose emergency restrictions, mandating curbs on outdoor watering, industrial use, and even residential consumption. Water markets could emerge as desperate users bid for scarce supplies, driving prices sky high. Tourism along scenic stretches of the Rio Grande, including rafting and fishing operations, could suffer if river flows drop or become erratic. Stakeholders from irrigation districts to recreational outfitters are now in talks to develop contingency plans, weighing options such as water sharing agreements and emergency pumping from alternative sources. The alert has also sparked heightened interest in resource exploration. Geological anomalies often signal the presence of mineral deposits. Hydrothermal systems can concentrate precious metals like gold and silver, as well as base metals such as copper and zinc. Prospectors and mining companies are eyeing the newly mapped structures with keen anticipation. Preliminary geochemical surveys have already recorded elevated concentrations of gold in sediment traps downstream of the anomaly. While extracting these resources could bring economic boon, it would also introduce its own environmental and social challenges. Mining operations risk further destabilizing the subsurface, exacerbating the very collapse hazards that prompted the red alert. Moreover, legal battles over mineral rights could pit private companies against public agencies and local communities. Climate change compounds the uncertainty. Models predict that the southwestern United States will experience more severe droughts and higher temperatures in the coming decades. Reduced snowpack in the Rocky Mountains means lower spring runoff into the Rio Grande, amplifying competition for a shrinking supply. At the same time, extreme precipitation events, when they occur, could overwhelm the river's capacity, causing flash floods that transport vast quantities of sediment. Rapid deposition could mask or clog existing voids, creating false security until a collapse triggers sudden release. These dynamic interactions underscore the need for integrated monitoring that couples hydrological forecasting, climate modeling, and geotechnical surveillance. Institutions across state and national boundaries are considering joint funding for a comprehensive observation network. International implications cannot be ignored. The Rio Grande forms a natural border between the United States and Mexico for hundreds of miles, and water-sharing treaties govern its allocation. A major disturbance to the river's flow regime could violate treaty terms, fueling geopolitical tensions. Mexican officials have expressed concern that any unplanned diversion of water underground may contravene established allocations, while U.S. authorities worry about legal liabilities if infrastructure suffers damage from subsidence. Diplomatic channels are already active, with binational committees exploring measures to ensure equitable management. Proposed remedies range from installing subsurface barriers to injecting grout into critical fractures. But each option carries technical, legal, and environmental trade-offs. Academic circles are abuzz with the broader scientific significance of the find. Few documented cases exist of riverbed-scale karst or hydrothermal caverns interacting so directly with major surface waterways. This might be one of the largest such systems ever discovered beneath an active river. Studying it could yield insights into crustal processes, sedimentary basin evolution, and fluid rock interactions in extensional settings. Research institutions are racing to secure funding for intensive field campaigns, including deep borehole drilling, 3D seismic imaging, and isotopic analysis of water and minerals. Graduate students see opportunities for groundbreaking dissertations, while veteran geologists relish the chance to unravel a geological mystery that has lain hidden for eons. The technological feat of detecting and mapping the void also demonstrates the power of modern geophysical methods. Teams combined surface and borehole seismic surveys with electrical resistivity tomography to triangulate the anomaly's shape and extent. Unmanned underwater vehicles equipped with side-scan sonar navigated beneath shallow river currents, while fiber optic cables laid along drill holes recorded microtremors to resolve small-scale fractures. Data fusion techniques, employing machine learning algorithms, synthesize disparate datasets into coherent three-dimensional models. The success of this interdisciplinary approach not only validates prior investments in geophysical research, but also sets a new standard for hazard assessment in other riverine environments worldwide. Regulatory agencies find themselves under intense pressure to act swiftly. The U.S. Geological Survey and state geological surveys are collaborating to issue guidelines for land use and development in the affected corridor. Permits for new wells, bridges, and levees may be temporarily suspended until risk assessments are completed. Federal emergency funds are on standby to support monitoring efforts and potential mitigation projects. Local governments face tough decisions balancing property rights, economic interests, and public safety. Mall developers, ranchers, and conservation groups all have stakes in how the alert evolves, and public hearings are being scheduled to solicit community input. Effective communication will be crucial to maintain trust and avoid panic. Insurance companies, too, are revising their liability models. Underwriters typically exclude sinkhole-related losses from standard policies, but the scale of this discovery may prompt a reevaluation. Homeowner policies could see new endorsements requiring periodic ground surveys, while commercial insurers might elevate premiums for properties near the anomaly. Agricultural insurers will have to factor in the heightened risks of irrigation failure and soil subsidence. Some analysts predict the emergence of specialized geo-risk insurance products. Actuaries will need to integrate geotechnical data into financial models, a novel challenge that could reshape the insurance landscape in geologically active regions. Public outreach efforts are in full swing. Scientific teams are preparing materials aimed at non-specialist audiences to explain the nature of the discovery, the methods used to detect it, and the possible scenarios that lie ahead. Town hall meetings, informational videos, and interactive websites are being developed to demystify complex geological concepts. The goal is to empower residents with accurate knowledge, dispel rumors, and encourage informed participation in decision-making. Community liaisons are being trained to translate technical jargon into plain language and to gather feedback on local concerns. The hope is that transparency and engagement will foster resilience rather than fear. As efforts to characterize the mysterious void beneath the Rio Grande press forward, researchers are beginning to explore the potential for novel engineering interventions designed to stabilize the subsurface environment without disrupting natural hydrological processes. One such concept under evaluation involves the controlled injection of low-viscosity grouts into strategic fracture networks to shore up cavern roofs and limit further enlargement. These grouts, formulated with environmentally benign additives, could percolate through existing fissures and solidify upon contact with groundwater, forming an internal scaffold that redistributes stresses more evenly. Pilot tests in analogous settings have demonstrated that, with careful monitoring, such injections can reduce the risk of catastrophic collapse while preserving sufficient permeability to maintain native groundwater flows. Yet, the logistical challenges of delivering grout at the required depths, often hundreds of meters below the riverbed, demand innovative drilling and monitoring technologies, as well as precise modeling to predict grout behavior under variable pressure and temperature conditions. In parallel, scientists are investigating biomediated sealing techniques that harness natural microbial processes to precipitate calcite or other minerals within void spaces. By introducing select strains of bacteria along with nutrient solutions, it may be possible to encourage in situ mineralization that gradually fills critical cavities. Laboratory experiments have shown that ureolytic microbes can induce calcite deposition at rates sufficient to bridge small to medium-sized gaps, potentially reinforcing the cavern's roof from within. Field-scale trials, however, must contend with the river's dynamic flow regime, which could disperse microbial cultures or nutrients before effective colonization. Researchers are therefore designing delivery systems, such as gel-carried inocula or slow-release nutrient capsules, to target specific zones identified through detailed mapping. Should these methods prove successful, they might offer a low-impact, self-healing solution that complements mechanical grouting efforts and reduces the need for repeated human intervention. Meanwhile, advanced remote sensing techniques are being deployed to track subtle signals of ongoing subsurface changes. Interferometric synthetic aperture radar, INSAR, satellite observations allow geophysicists to detect ground deformation with millimeter precision over broad areas. By comparing successive radar images, teams can map surface subsidence patterns that hint at incremental cavern roof sagging. When combined with ground-based tilt meters and GPS stations, these data provide a near real-time picture of evolving hazards. Novel algorithms that integrate INSAR data with hydrological models are under development to tease out deformation driven by fluctuating water pressures versus tectonic stress adjustments. Accurate attribution of causes is crucial for calibrating early warning thresholds, distinguishing between harmless seasonal oscillations and the precursors of rapid collapse. Emerging sensor networks beneath the riverbed itself are also a focal point for technological innovation. Flexible fiber optic cables capable of detecting strain, temperature, and acoustic emissions can be threaded through drill holes to create an embedded monitoring grid. Such arrays have already been successfully tested in geothermal fields and deep mines, where they record microseismic events and pressure changes indicative of evolving fracture systems. A scalable deployment under the Rio Grande might involve dozens of boreholes, each instrumented with distributed sensing lines that collectively cover the most vulnerable cavern zones. Data from these subsurface networks would feed into machine learning platforms tasked with pattern recognition, seeking signatures that historically precede collapse in other contexts. This fusion of high-resolution sensing and artificial intelligence could yield predictive capabilities far beyond what traditional geotechnical monitoring has offered. As the technical response takes shape, legal experts and water rights attorneys are grappling with questions of liability and compensation. How should financial responsibility be apportioned if a sinkhole suddenly ravages farmland or undermines a municipal pipeline? Precedents from sinkhole-prone regions suggest that property owners often face onerous burdens, while insurers and government agencies negotiate complex settlements. Some stakeholders argue for the creation of a dedicated geological hazard fund, supported by levies on water users and infrastructure operators, to provide rapid relief to affected parties. Such a fund could be modeled on existing mechanisms for flood or earthquake assistance, but would need specialized criteria to trigger disbursements based on geotechnical indicators rather than meteorological or seismic events. Draft legislation is already circulating in state capitals along the Rio Grande corridor, with lobbyists and community groups offering divergent views on funding sources and governance structures. At the academic level, the Rio Grande Void has catalyzed interdisciplinary research consortia spanning geology, hydrology, engineering, ecology, and social science. One ambitious initiative proposes the establishment of an Earth Systems Observatory along the river, comprising a network of instrumented sites that monitor everything from groundwater chemistry to bird migrations. By integrating geological hazard assessment with ecosystem health and community resilience studies, the aim is to generate holistic models of coupled natural-human systems. Such an observatory could serve as a testbed for novel management strategies, combining water allocation adjustments, habitat restoration, and infrastructure adaptation to minimize risks and maximize benefits. Funding proposals for this observatory are currently under review by federal science agencies, philanthropic foundations, and international partners interested in transboundary river management. In the policy arena, the void discovery is prompting a re-evaluation of long-term basin planning. Water management authorities are exploring scenario-based planning exercises that incorporate potential collapse events into their demand forecasts. For instance, irrigation districts may model the impact of partial water loss over several contiguous seasons, identifying which crops are most vulnerable and where alternative sources, such as treated wastewater or managed aquifer recharge, could be deployed. Urban water suppliers are similarly revisiting contingency plans, examining whether emergency pipelines or interconnections with neighboring utilities could offset sudden supply disruptions. Some municipalities are considering drought-tolerant landscape ordinances and tiered pricing structures to reduce peak demand, thereby increasing system flexibility in the face of uncertain subsurface dynamics. Beyond water quantity, regulators are also turning their attention to water quality protection in light of the subterranean void. The potential for contaminants to migrate between surface and deep aquifers has spurred proposals for new wellhead protection zones and stricter controls on industrial discharges near the river. Environmental agencies are debating whether to classify the affected stretch of the river as a vulnerable zone, triggering heightened scrutiny of any projects that could exacerbate subsurface connectivity, such as high-capacity wells or deep soil remediation activities. At the same time, agricultural runoff management plans are being refined to limit nutrient and pesticide loads that might be rapidly transmitted into groundwater through compromised sediments. Enhanced monitoring of key parameters, nitrate, arsenic, microbial indicators, is now on many agencies' watch lists, with mobile laboratories and citizen science initiatives supplementing official sampling networks. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the red alert beneath Rio Grande? What do you expect? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.